Y'all are really gonna think I've lost it this time, and I may have. Today we are making a patchwork pumpkin pillow out of old fabric swatches from an upholstery book. That's right, these are all just upholstery fabric samples that I found in one of those upholstery sample books at a local craft thrift store. Let's make something fun out of them. Guys, is this not just the cutest little pillow? And it's a pumpkin. All right, here's the deal. Couple years ago, I was in Pennsylvania at the Lancaster Craft Reuse Store. I think that's how it's called. Anyway, they were selling these books of upholstery fabric samples for $4 a piece. And it's a lot of fabric, you guys. So I picked up a book of neutrals and I picked up a book of colorfuls. So $8 in, and they've been sitting in my craft room for years. And yesterday I was like, I really want to make a pumpkin pillow. I want to do a tutorial on a patchwork pumpkin something, but I wanted to make it a little different than what you've been seeing, because you can Google patchwork pumpkin and find table runners and all kinds of things, but I wanted to show you a way to make it a little bit different. So that's what we're doing today, is taking this upholstery fabric and turning it into this adorable pumpkin pillow. So here's the deal. If you can't get your hands on any of these books, I would go ahead and just use some home decor fabric that you find in the remnant bin. There's a lot of places though, like fabric stores. I will say though, like a lot of upholstery fabric stores, we have one down in Nashville. I'm sure they have remnants as well. You can also find these books, these like, cut up books, or even intact still on eBay, on Etsy, on Facebook Marketplace. I saw some in my area, and some places just sell these already cut out. They're just like piles of these fabric swatches by the pound. So you are not completely out of luck here. You just need to know where to look. And don't forget about like your Goodwills and your thrift stores and your craft thrift stores, or even just call a local furniture store and ask if they ever have these and if what they do when they're done with them. Maybe you'll get some for free. So the pillow we're making today, I have this currently in a 20 by 20 inch. It's a pillow form inside that's 20 by 20 inches. I have a 22 inch by 22 inch on its way to me right now. And I will hopefully be able, if the Amazon delivery person comes while I'm filming, I'm going to go grab it. I'm also going to try a 22 inch by 22 inch pillow form in this. The finished size of this is right at like 21 inches. So you could go either way. Like right now it looks pretty full, but I'm curious if it'll look even more like puffy and full with a bigger pillow form inside. So either way, those two sizes will work fine. As you can see, this still looks like a perfectly puffy pillow. So what we're going to need for the inside part of our pumpkin are 20 of whatever color you're using. So if you're going to use just regular fabric, that's fine. Use just orange or whatever, floats your boat. I'm going for a neutral palette. I'm trying to be more of a grown-up. It's very hard because, as you know, I love color. So I automatically was like, what if we did this in like hot pink? But I'm trying to be a grown-up. So I actually really like how this turned out. Not everything has to be flashy and crazy. I'm learning that in my old age. So this is just neutrals. I used a little bit of brown, again, from one of the palettes that I had, and then some darker green for the stem. So whatever that looks like for you. And then for your outer fabric, the backing for the front part of your pillow, you're going to need 1/3 of a yard for the back part, like the backing part of your front panel. And then whatever you're going to use for your envelope on the back, you're going to need 1/2 of a yard. So if you're going to do all the same color for the back of your pillow and then the backing of the front of your pillow, I think you could get away with a yard and be fine. I tried to overguess on those numbers, instead of putting it too close where you run out of fabric. All right. Let me show you what to do. This is so easy to come. It just comes together really fast. Oh, the other thing you're going to need is some fusible interfacing. I'm just using a lightweight one. It doesn't have to be super crazy heavy. I used a fusible fleece on some of these squares just as like a test yesterday, and I think it's just a little too thick. The upholstery fabric is already a little bit thicker, and so it's not harder to sew, but it's just thicker to sew. So I would recommend a 90-14 needle for this. And I think that's it. Let's get into it. Now, I've already cut a good amount of these, but I wanted to show you how I cut them so that you have a frame of reference. So I've got plenty of squares here, but I have 3 more left to cut. So I'm going to grab my rotary cutter and my acrylic ruler. And as you can see, and you'll find this on all of them, they're going to have this like paper backing. I don't actually need this section, so I'm just going to cut away from it and not worry about it for this particular project. So what I'm going to do is I stack usually 3 at a time because otherwise you'll be sitting here cutting for eternity. And I'm going to just get them as even as I can, but we're about to square them up. And what I will do, I'm going to cut just to the right of that paper. So that gives us one edge. And then I'm going to make these 4 inches. So we'll measure over 4 inches and cut there. And then let's flip it over. This one I kind of wanted to fussy cut because it's so cute. I love this little flower design. So I'm going to make sure that gets in. So if any of your pieces have sort of a centered design that you want to include, just make sure that you pay attention to that as you're cutting your fabrics. And then 4 inches over. Okay, so we've got our squares. I've got plenty. I could probably make a 3rd pillow. And I'm going to put those aside for now. And then for our stem, we need to cut another 4x4 piece. And I want my stem to be in this kind of, I don't know, looks like your grandma's couch, kind of. And these have sort of a different paper design. And what I have found, sometimes it pops right off. But if it doesn't, you can just warm it up a little bit. And that gets that glue kind of mushy. And you just use your iron for this. And it usually peels off pretty easily. See how easily that comes off now? And I don't need more than 4x4. So, and honestly, if you have a little bit of paper on it, I wouldn't even stress it. Like, I'm not going to worry about this. I'm just going to sew over it. Who cares? So this is already 4 inches going this way. So I'm going to cut over here and trim off that. And we'll go over 4 inches this way. Stupendous. Okay, so there's our stem piece. And then we need a little leaf. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to warm up my sides. And if it doesn't work, you should potentially have a lot of other, I have so many other pieces back there that I could turn to try and make work for this project. But you see how easily that comes off. So that's just a good little trick. Just don't leave it on for too long because it might, you know, I don't know, paper and heat. Just feels like a bad combo. Pull this one off. Oh, yeah. So easy. I love this velvet. I think that's going to make such a cute stem on our pumpkin pillow. Are you so proud of me for using neutrals? I'm kind of a grown-up, if you didn't notice. Measure 4 inches over. My husband and I have this thing, even though we're in our 40s. I will still look at him sometimes and be like, does this make us grown-ups? Because we kind of have grown up together. We got together when we were in our mid-20s, and we are not the same as we were back then. I'll tell you that in a good way. So let's go ahead and cut just like the backing pieces of our pumpkin, just where it kind of trims it in to make it a pumpkin. And I'm using a solid blue for this. I think the blue with the neutrals and the greens and the browns is really kind of cool. Look at me turning into a neutral lover. So I'm going to fold this. I just have a piece of fabric. Like I said, you'll need about a yard if you make all of it the same color, backing and back. And I'm just going to fold this up. We're still working with 4-inch squares. And I'm going to cut along the width of fabric, and we'll see how many we can get out of this width of fabric here. So 4 inches up, and I grab my trusty journal because I wrote everything in here for what we need. I love this thing. I sell this on my website. It's a project tracking journal, and it is so helpful. I use mine all the time for just writing down simple numbers that, like, if I'm making something, you know, with my creativity, sometimes I don't always remember to write those pieces down. So for the back of our, not the back, but the back round of our pillow, we're going to need, we got our 4-inch squares. We need 3 4-inch squares of blue or whatever your color is. I've got this folded over here, so I know I can get, there's 2, and let's see, we'll open this up. Okay, so we've got 3 of our 4-inch squares. We're going to need 5 3.5-inch squares. So what I'm going to do is fold this back over, match up my raw edges, measure over 3.5. So that gives me 2. We'll cut another one at 3.5. And go ahead and cut 6 because there's one more piece we need to cut and we can cut down the square from 3.5 to what we needed to. So we're going to cut actually 6, 3, and that's left over. So save that. And I'm just going to stack these up except for the one. I'm going to leave this guy out. So I've got 5 stacked right here. And I'm going to trim these down to 3.5-inch pieces. So now we've got 5 3.5-inch squares. Lovely. And then the last piece you need is 1 2.5-inch square. So I'm just going to get this on my ruler here. 2.5 is right there. And then the other direction is right here. So I'm going to cut that out. And while we're here, let's go ahead and prep these pieces. So what I'm going to do is grab my fusible interfacing here. You can get this on Amazon. I like it on the roll. You can buy it by the bolt and get like a 1 yard cut, but then it's just kind of flippy floppy. And I like when it's on the roll because it helps me kind of keep things organized. And also I'm more likely to remember what the interfacing is because sometimes I cut these pieces off and just toss them somewhere in my sewing room and nobody knows what they are then when it's time to go and use them, which is not very helpful. So I'm going to cut a 4-inch piece. I'm just sort of using, I have like a scrap hanging off here. So I'm going to go ahead and start it at 4 and then we'll trim it down as we go. And there's another one. I think I may need 3 or 4 of these little pieces. And what this does is your upholstery fabric is naturally sort of thicker than quilting cotton. So I'm adding this little extra bit to my quilting cotton to sort of even the playing field and make sure things are a little bit more similar across the board as we make our pillow. All right, so we've cut our interfacing and now we're going to stick it to our fabric. So I'm starting with my 4.5-inch squares. I already did a couple of them and I'm just laying it right on top. The bumpy side is facing up and my pretty side is facing up, but there's really no pretty side to a solid fabric. It's all pretty. We're just going to stick it on there. Now, if you wanted to, you could just interface the whole strip before you cut down your squares, which might save you a little bit of time. I'm not really that worried about it. And then I'm just going to cut that piece out. Let me just hit it one more time with the iron. Now let these cool completely and they will firm up a little bit with that those glue dots that are melted in. Okay, so now we're on to our 3.5-inch squares. So I'm just going to lay these side by side. Save us a little time and press those. I'm just staying away from that bumpy side. So if you want to cut that before you iron it, that's fine. Or if you have a good eye and you can keep away from those edges, that's fine. You just don't want to gunk up your iron with the glue dots. So we'll do that. And then the other thing you could do is just lay this down and cut up that little line right there and that way. Okay, so finish interfacing your pieces, all of them, the blue ones are your background pieces, and then I'll meet you back here and we'll lay out this pumpkin and start sewing. Okay, I had to clear the decks for this next part because we're going to lay out this pumpkin and it gets a little bit big. So the first thing we're going to start with are our 4.5-inch background pieces, and we are going to do 1 and 2 of those. And then next we have our stem piece, which looks a little bigger. I'm going to double check my size on this one. It looks a little bigger than it needs to be. I may have missed it. Oh yeah, this one side is just a little bit longer. Always double check, and if it looks a little off, take a second and just fix it. Okay, so there's our stem piece. And then here's our leaf. I'll double check this one. Oh yeah, he's a little long as well. Heavens. Okay, so the stem's going to go there, and then you'll have one more 4.5-inch right there. So that's our top row. And now is the fun part. We get to put together all these cute hair ties. I'm definitely using this guy. He's got to be in there somewhere. And I just sort of use my feelings to place these pieces. I've got a good mixture of like whites and sort of beiges and tans. So, and then like some of these darker ones, I don't know, that might throw off the aesthetic. That's almost like a stem color. So we're going to throw him out. Let's see. Oh, this one's fun. Just have fun with it. It's not that serious. It's just, oh, that's too dark too. Just do whatever feels good in the moment. I feel like a darker one needs to be up here. What do I got here? Oh, he's cute. Let's put that there. This one's fun. All of these textures make this so visually interesting, I think, to the person experiencing the pillow. Not that we experience pillows, but you get what I'm saying. I just think it kind of amps up the feel of it. It looks a little fancier, and I think that's kind of fun. We are doing 20 of these squares, so however that works out for you. I am loving, I don't love this one. He's not fitting in real well. Mix that to here. This guy's cute. Oh, I have 2 of those. Okay. Now take a step back and look at it. Sometimes looking at it in the camera is helpful too. I think I don't like this. So he's gonna go. And I think this needs to move. Got too many patterns competing. Like these are too close together. Let's switch those. Just move it around till you're happy. Is this too distracting? I almost feel like this might be a little too distracting. Yeah, I think it takes away from the overall beauty. So let's fix that. Sorry, little piece. And then this needs to move back up. Yeah, I think this one's distracting too. It's hard not to get in your head about this. Try not to get too far into your head on this one. And these are the same pattern. So let's move this around just a little. Okay. No, there's too much here happening. Let's do there. That's it. That's the one. All right. So get rid of everything else because we don't want it to confuse us. Now you're going to see that you've got some of these leftover squares in the blue here, and we're going to use those right now. So before we piece this, we have to add some little corner pieces that will become what make the shape of the pumpkin more apparent. So those go on the tops and top right, top left, bottom right of each corner. And we'll just put those face down. And then these last 2 pieces are going to attach to the leaf. So we're going to do a large piece up here, and then we have this little square that's going to go here. So if you need that a little closer up, it should look like this. We're not going to sew it with all these pieces just laying like this, but I'll show you how to do that. We can start with that one since it's probably like, I'm going to say the trickiest, but it's really not that tricky. All right, let's get to sewing. The first thing we're going to tackle are those weird pieces where we have this like extra overlay on it. I'm going to show you how to deal with those right now. So this is my bottom right corner. And what I want this to do is become this. So to do that, I need to draw a diagonal line across from corner to corner on the smaller piece. And we're going to sew right along that line. And we're going to do that with all of our pieces. So let me show you on this one. So lay it down. I've got my stitch length at a 2.5, and I'm just using regular white Aurifil cotton thread. And I'm actually going to do a stitch forward and then a stitch backward on this, just to make sure that nothing goes out of place while we're sewing and piecing this all together. And I'm sewing right along that blue line. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is take my piece and trim about 1/4 of an inch to the right of that line. And we're going to take it over to the ironing board and press it out. I'll do that in a minute. Now, you're going to do that for your top right, top left, and bottom left pumpkin corners. But while we're here, let me show you how to sew this piece up because it's got the 2 pieces, which can be confusing. So move this one out of the way for now. And you're going to draw your line on the bigger square, just like we did before. I think that's one thing about sewing that like new quilters have trouble with is when you start sewing, a lot of times you like get a pattern. And I think sometimes you just need that person sitting with you saying, this is how it is supposed to look, and just confirming your thoughts. Because I felt like when I was learning to sew, there were lots of things that I was like, well, is that right? And it would have been helpful if I just had somebody right with me there saying like, yep, you got it. And I feel like I'm hoping that's what these tutorials are, is like kind of a reassurance for you. And that turned out great. So let's now turn it. And in the other corner, I'm going to hold this out of the way. You can pin it or clip it if you want. And we're going to draw another diagonal line on this side now. So even it up. Draw your line and sew on the line. This velvet is very slippery, so it kind of shifts during flight, which is obnoxious. So keep your hands down on it if you use velvet like I'm doing. Okay, now we can trim this. So I'm going to trim at my 1/4 inch over here, and then trim off this 1/4 inch. Okay. When you open that up, it looks like a little stem. So I'm going to finish sewing those little corner pieces, and then I'm just going to press these so that they're nice and flat and look like a square again. And then I'll meet you back here and we'll start piecing this pumpkin patchwork perfect pipper popple too many peas pillow together. Everything is pressed. I laid it all back in its spot, and now we're ready to sew these together. So I like to work from left to right, and within that, I will put the right over on left. It'll all make sense in a second. So what we're going to do is take our second row and flip it over onto our far left row. And for me, this just makes more sense in my brain as I'm sewing these together. I'm still trying to figure out which one. Yeah, that's the right side. Make sure all your right sides are touching or as best you can. Some of these upholstery fabrics are tricky. Okay, so this is what I'm going to sew first, right down this line, and I'm going to chain piece that. So let me show you how to do that. I'll try and give you a couple different camera angles on this one so you really can see what I'm doing. I'm going to take off my zigzag foot, and I'm putting on my 1/4 inch quilt foot with guide. So pick up your top piece, and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch straight down. And then I'm going to grab my next piece, which I laid out, match those raw edges really nicely. Sometimes with these more thick upholstery fabrics, you kind of have to lift your presser foot to get it under so that your feed dogs can grab it pretty well. And that's okay. Grab the next piece. This is my 4th row here. Use your fingers to keep everything flat. And then here's the last, the corner piece. Pull this back towards you. Everything's in order. And open your first piece. Now I'm going to go right up here to my stem, which is the beginning of my 3rd row, and lay it pretty side down and start sewing. So that's how chain piecing works. We're creating sort of a giant spider web of fabrics, but they're all going to be in order now because I did this, which is kind of helpful. So chain piecing is not something you have to just take and do right off the bat if you're just beginning, but once you start getting more comfortable, it is a big time saver, which is great. So I'm just going to keep working my way down, adding the next one on, and then when I get to the bottom of this row, I'll start at the top of the next row, okay? So keep doing that until you get all of your rows attached, and then I'll show you how to attach them going horizontally, okay? All right, everything is sewn together in this spider webby mess. And it's actually helpful that it looks like this because we don't have to try and figure out what goes where. All I'm going to do is take my top row and fold it down onto my next row. Not worry about this bottom part. I'm just worrying about what's in my hands. And looks like those seams are going to match up pretty nicely. So I'm going to lay my first 2 seams together, and I'm going to nest my seams. And what that means is I've got one seam going up on this side and this seam is going down. And what that creates is a perfect match to your seams. When you can figure out nesting your seams, your quilting journey will amp up significantly. Your seams will match up better. Your quilts will turn out a little bit more professional looking. It's a great thing to master, and it's really not that hard. The way to get really nice nested seams is there's 2 things you need to do. The first is to make sure that when you're cutting your fabrics at the very beginning, that you're doing that as accurately as possible. And the second thing that helps with getting those seams to match up well is to ensure that you're following the same seam allowance throughout your project and doing the best you can to hit right on that mark. So if it's a 1/4 inch, just making sure that that's consistent throughout your pillow or whatever you're making. So I'm just sewing through each nest, and then I'm stopping. Some of these upholstery fabrics get a little fuzzy. I had one up my nose a minute ago and I was sneezing. I had to turn the camera off. And so now we're going to this next one. I'm matching those seams up. I'm holding them down with my fingers because I know that they're matched up nicely right now. Got a thread caught on my bar of my 1/4 inch quilt foot. There we go. That is the trick about sewing these upholstery fabrics, is they have different like fabrics going throughout them and threads that kind of pop out from other places, which makes it interesting. I've reached the end. I'm going to do a back stitch. I don't want this falling apart while I'm ironing it and sewing it. It's cute. Row 1 and 2. Fold the next row down, match it up, and sew that. And then just keep working your way down until you have a full pumpkin panel. A perfectly patchworked pumpkin panel. I'm sorry, I'm having way too much fun with alliteration today. Oh, why do you guys watch me? I really don't know. All right, I'm going to keep doing this and I'll meet you back here. I'm going to show you how to press this out. And then we will put our sides on and make a pillow. Yeah. All right, here is our beautiful pumpkin block. I mean, that's cute. I am going to use what is called my Lara Star Lift Plus, and this is a steam iron, and it really helps get things flat. As you can see right now, this is very puffy. Now, I'm not going to lie, these irons are super expensive. I am a professional seamstress. This is my job. So I saved up and got one of these because it's worth it, but you don't need this. A steam iron is going to work fine. We just want to get those edges, those seams on the back to behave. And adding some steam really helps. Now, a lot of quilters have feelings about steam. What I will say is this Lara Star steam iron has a filter, and it ensures that your water is always safe for your projects, which is great. So I'm just kind of going seam by seam and flattening them out as I go because it's just so chunky with all those different fabrics involved. So I'm going to keep working on this. And then once I get everything pretty flat on the back, then I'm going to hit it from the front and make sure that it just really stays down. I do love this iron. And my back is not perfect or pretty, but who cares? Because we're not looking at the back. We're looking at the front, which looks great. So now things are a little flatter, but I am going to go ahead and just go over the whole thing again. That looks pretty good. All right, let's go trim it up. All right, measurement wise, we want this to be pretty much an 18-ish by 18-inch square. Let's see if we got near that. And since I have free will and it is my sewing room, because some of these edges are a little bumpy and wonky, I'm just going to make it a 17.5 by 17.5 inch square, because why not? Okay, so I'm going to trim off about a 1/4 inch here, and it's just going to look so much nicer. And it'll make our next steps easier. And it's really not that big of a deal because it's a pillow and pillows have forgiveness. Flat on my line here. I'm going to do just enough to even it up. It's on that 20 line, and now we're getting close to 17.5, which is what we wanted. So that's good. You can even make this 17 by 17 if you want. It's all good. Not worth worrying about. I think that's another thing. Like when I was learning to quilt and sew, I was like, oh, it's not perfect. Now, if this was a quilt and it was multiple blocks, then we might need to talk more. But for a single project where you're just making one quilt block, heavens, let's not lose sleep over it. Now we've got a pretty square block, except this little piece is sticking out and driving me crazy. We're going to cut our border pieces to make this have a nice blue border to it. So go ahead and grab that blue fabric again, or whatever color you're using, and we are going to cut 3-inch pieces. So I'm going to do 2 3-inch strips that are the width of the fabric, so just as long as your piece is, or wide, I guess. So cut this on the 3-inch line. There's 1, 2. So you really don't need a whole lot for the back of your, like the background of your front of your pillow. That's hard to say. Now, the first piece that we're going to cut is going to be whatever the length is of one of your sides. I like to do the top and bottom strips first and then attach them at the sides. You do it however you like. So I am going to trim off my selvage here, like so. And it comes out to right around, I think, 17.5 inches. Just make sure. Yeah, right at 17.5. So I'm going to cut it in line just like that. I'm going to save this piece because we're going to use that for the up and down part. And then I'm going to cut off my selvage and then cut another piece from this second strip, 17.5 inches long. Okay, and put this aside. You might want to press this little crease out. We'll do that in a second. All right, let's sew these pieces on. So grab one of those pieces. And you know what? I think we should probably put interfacing on these. I forgot that step. Whoops. So bring your interfacing back over. Is it necessary? Probably not, but it's nice to have everything sort of even keel across the board. Okay, so what I'm going to do is trim this way. And I'm going to trim off this little extra and save it for later. And then we'll roll this out and cut another piece. Great. Put the bumpy side up and lay one of your pieces down with the bumpy side up so it will glue on. And heck, I'm feeling crazy. Let's just lay them both out at the same time and then just work your way across. I really like ironing interfacing onto things. It's very satisfying to me. Just making something stick to it. I could just sit here and iron interfacing all day. Okay, now we're ready. So I'm going to take my first piece and lay it at the top, pretty sides touching, and we're going to sew right along the edge at 1/4 inch. All right. So my little one, my littlest son, went to kindergarten last week for his first day. I just thought this was funny. And my kids are all pretty independent, like not real clingy. Like we like to snuggle and be lovey, but like they don't need us as much as like I think some other kids depend on their parents for like emotional. I don't, maybe we've destroyed them. Maybe there's a problem there, but they're very independent kids. And so the first day of kindergarten, I had to go to a meeting at my other son's school and I couldn't walk him in and my husband had to be at work for an early meeting. And so I said to my daughter, I said, you know, I need you to be mommy today. Like I can't be there. And so he might be scared or nervous. And so I need you to walk him to his class before you walk to your class. So after school, I'm like, how did it go? Did everybody do okay? And my daughter was a little irritated. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, well, she said, I tried to walk him to class and we got to the kindergarten hall and he turned to me and said, I've got this, just go to your class. He walked himself into kindergarten on the first day. I can't with that kid. And so it was really funny because yesterday, this was a week and a half into school, they had what was called Kinderpendence Day, which is where everybody has to walk themselves to class. Like they get a couple of days to, get used to it with a parent and then it's all on their own. And my son was like, do I have to do that? I've been walking myself to class since the beginning. It's like, I mean, you don't have to participate in Kinderpendence Day, I guess, but you already have been. So, and like, there's a part of me that like, I want him to need us, but I'm so proud that he is able to do things independently. So I'm really, that just tickled me. That's one that we'll write down for the memory book for sure. I think my mom told me I did the same thing. And when I called to tell her what happened, she's like, well, that's what you did to me your first day of kindergarten. You told me to go home. So he gets it honest. All right, so we've got these attached now. This is starting to look really good. I'm going to bring over the pressing mat and we're going to press this seam. I'm going to press it up towards where there's less stuff happening. That sounds good. And it doesn't have to be like, pressing for 20 minutes, just sort of getting it to behave and lay flat. And I like to press it from the front side as well once I get it going in the direction it needs to go. Gosh, I just love the way this looks. I'm really excited I was able to find a use for those fabric swatches. They have just been sitting in a pile. You guys all probably have this, like your to-do, but we're not really sure what to do pile. That's where this lived for the longest time. And I kept thinking, oh, it might work for that, but it wasn't quite right. And then when this popped into my head, I was like, that is absolutely perfect for a pumpkin. And how fun would this be to just do in just patchwork? I mean, it's cute and regardless, and you're using something that nobody else would use and probably would get ended up in a landfill. So I feel proud of myself for doing that and making a recycled project today. Okay, now I want you to cut your next piece, the length, and it will be a little bit longer. You should have some leeway there. Yeah, you have about 3 inches left over. So go ahead and cut 2 more pieces that are the length of this new length now that you've added the top and bottom. Attach the interfacing and attach them to the sides of the pillow just like you did before. And then I'll meet you back here and we'll make the pillow. It's time to cut the back pieces that will be the envelope part of the pillowcase. Now listen, I've got 2 ways you can do this that make sense. Okay, so I want to save you as much fabric as possible. Now, I said in the beginning, you're going to need about a half of a yard of fabric for the back. That being said, it depends on the length of your fabric because we're cutting it really close here. As you can see, I need this to be the same length as this, but when I get rid of my selvage, it's a little bit iffy. So first, let's cut it to be the width we need. So we're cutting 2 pieces because we're cutting through double layers. And so we need 15 inches from left to right. So let me even up the edges here. Now here's where you have a choose your own adventure. Now, if you don't want to deal with any of this, just buy an extra half, buy a full yard of backing fabric instead of half a yard. Or if you're using, scraps or stuff laying around your room, you might already have something that will make this easier. You can see I've got the dots of my selvage here. It's literally this serious for this stuff. If I flatten this out, I need 22 inches. This is right at 22 inches, okay? So the chances of this working are slim because I'm going to have to cut off a half of an inch unless you want to just leave your selvage, but I would not entirely recommend that. So what we're going to do instead, and this actually helps in the long run, I think, is we're going to cut off some of our pillow. So right now the pillow is at 22 inches. And like I said, if you don't want to do this, if you don't want to lose any of your acreage on your pillow, just buy a full yard of fabric. But I'm trying to make this as scrappy as possible. So I'm going to cut a half of an inch off every side. And this is still going to be fine for the 22-inch pillow form because it's okay to make your pillowcase just a smidge smaller. Pillows are very squishy, so it'll fit in there still. So I'm going to cut off half of an inch here. And this actually is a nice thing to do because even though they're pretty even, you could always stand to even up your sides a little bit more when you're sewing strips together. So throw those edges together. Make sure everything is nice and flat. Get rid of this ½ inch here. And then we'll do it to the other side. So again, you can do whatever you want. It is your world, honey. I am just living in it. But that's what I'm going to do to solve this problem. Because I like the rest of the measurements. I like the way that everything else turned out. It's just this little bit of fabric that we have to try and figure out and get right. Let's turn it this way. Even it on out. You can see, look, like it's not exactly correct right now. So this will help it be even better. And I'm actually going to pull this just a smidge over. All right. Now we've still got a beautiful big pillowcase. Let's see if half of this piece will now run the length. Yes, so if we cut the selvage off, it's going to make it. Hurrah. So let's do that. Let's move this out of the way. I hate to cut it close like that on projects. That's not usually my jam. So again, if you want to just buy a little extra fabric, or if you have it, that will completely solve the problem. Okay, so cut those selvages off, and then we're going to cut the fabric in half right on the fold. So that's why I haven't pressed this out yet. And I'm cutting really close to those selvages because even though it fits, we don't want to lose anything that we don't need to lose. And then we've got that beautiful crease right there. So we can cut right up the crease. Now, let's get our iron back out, and we're going to press these pieces and press a 1/4 inch hem onto the long edges of each piece. Well, one long edge of each piece. So let me show you what that looks like. So I want to fold this 1/4 inch up like so. And we're going to press up that edge. Now, if you have a seam gauge, that'll work great on this step. I actually just purchased 2 new seam gauges and I left them in my car. So I feel like a 1/4 inch, we get pretty good at eyeballing as we sew more. I can't eyeball other measurements, maybe a 1/2 inch, but it probably wouldn't be perfect. 1/4 inch, I've got down pretty well. And again, it's not that serious. So then we're going to fold it over one more time, and that fully encloses the raw edge of the seam. This will be the seam that lays at the center of our pillowcase. The rest of the seams will get sewn into the edges. Okay, repeat that on this piece. Press it out, turn your hem up, and then I am going to switch my thread to navy blue so that it matches. Well, actually yesterday I think I sewed this with white, so I guess I'll just leave it with white. It doesn't look bad. Navy blue would have been better, but that's with, actually I think that looks kind of cute with the white edge. Whatever you want to do. It's your world. All right, so do that and I'll meet you at the machine and we'll attach everything together. Well, I completely got spaced out and forgot to show you how to sew the hem, but truly if you just press it over and over again at 1/4 inch and just sew it right up along that edge there, that's all you have to do. It's pretty simple. If you've made it this far in the project, I think you can handle that. All right, let's lay this out on our pillowcase. Oh, it's so cute. So lay that nice and flat in front of you and take one of your pieces and lay it pretty side down onto the pillowcase, matching your left and right corners, okay? And we are going to sew along this long edge right here. So grab your machine and we're sewing this long edge. We're attaching it at the left and right sides first. And we're going to do that 1/4 inch again. I'm going to start and stop with a back stitch because I don't want this to fall apart. Now, quick hint, and maybe something that I will get ripped on in the comments for, I'm not going to finish the seams of the inside of this pillow because I don't care about finishing the seams. It's not that important to me. It's on the inside of my pillow. If that matters to you, you can run a zigzag stitch along the edge here, or if you have a serger, you could do these last few steps entirely on the serger if you like. It's totally fine. I just feel like there are other things that I would rather spend my time on than covering the raw edges inside this pillow that is just going to live in my house. All right, sew that one up, back stitch. Okay, so it should look like this now. It's gonna be a big, long rectangle. Do the same thing, and I think it helps to lay it down so that you don't confuse yourself because you want your hem facing the correct way. So lay this down with your pretty side down onto the fabric and sew this seam here. I like envelope pillowcases because I don't think I'm going to want to have pumpkin pillows out in March. So what I can do now is just buy a set of pillow forms and I can make the same size, a 21 to 22-ish, even 20 might work, square pillowcase. It's not like an exact science. Pillows are squishy. And change them out with the season. So maybe I'll come back closer to Christmas time and show you how to make a Christmas something or other, or Halloween or winter on your pillowcase. I've got a little extra fabric on this one side, so I'm going to trim that down because I don't need it. And now we're going to connect them across the top and bottom. So lay one down, make sure it's all flat and lining up with your top and bottom edges. And then bring your other piece over and make sure that's all flat. Okay, it should make a nice square. We need to grab, oops, this side got kind of bubbly. Flatten that back out. Behave. There we go. Troublemaker. So grab some clips and just clip along this bottom edge and then flip it around and clip around the top edge. And since these are overlapping, you're good to just go ahead and sew right across the top and the bottom. And that's what will create the fully enclosed pillowcase. Slide that under. Start with a back stitch. And when I reach this part, I'm going to stop and sort of flatten everything out. Make sure it's running flat. Don't want any bubbles. I'm going to be such a grown-up with my grown-up pillows. Now, one trick to this. I am just going to sew right to my stitch line and then back stitch a couple times. But I'm not going to go all the way to the end of my fabric. And I didn't start at the beginning of my fabric. I should have said that earlier. Sorry. I want this to not go out because I want to trim this corner down a little bit. Now this side doesn't matter because I've crossed over that stitch and it'll be locked in. So try and remember that for when you do this step. If you don't remember it, it's totally fine. It's not that big of a deal. So like I said, I'm going to start so that my needle drops right into where my last set of stitches is, so that I'm not sewing into my corner. That way I can trim it. It's almost time. And I think, I'll have to double check, but I think I just got a notification that my Amazon package was delivered, which has my 22-inch pillow forks in it. So maybe we'll take a field trip down to the front porch after this little set of stitches. Want to come? Okay, stop at those stitches. Reinforce your corner a couple times back and forth. And so now you can see I can cut this corner fairly close to the stitch line. And those stitches won't fall out now because they're reinforced. Okay, so trim your corners just like this. And now it's time to flip this pillowcase right side out. Let's see how it turned out. Cute, 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 cute. I love you, I love you, I love you. I can't wait to see all the different color combos you do. And again, you don't have to use upholstery fabric for this. Just use regular quilting cotton if you want. If you want to make it a little bit thicker, cover the whole thing with that fusible interface. Just put it on every piece. It's fine. I just thought this would be an interesting, refreshing, different take on the pillow. Yes, I love it. All right, here is our pillow. All right, let's go down to the front porch and see if those pillowcases are there. Come on, let's go. Okay, you get to see my messy house. Isn't that fun? Do, 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 do. Let's see. Oh, hello, lover. Yes, you are on the porch. Ooh, they're heavy. Are there 4 in here? Or did I order 2? I think I just ordered 2. Okay, let's go back upstairs and we'll stick the pillow in and see how it looks. It arrived vacuum sealed. Now, when you open it, it's going to get fluffy, but it also tells you in the instructions that it usually takes like 48 hours to get like fully fluffed. So, I don't know. We'll see if this fits. Ooh, it's got some fluff coming out the sides. So my pillowcase right now measures 20.5 inches, which this is 22, so it may or may not work. This is the 20-inch pillowcase, and it fits pretty well, but like a little bit of room. Love an experiment. We'll see what happens. Push it all the way into the corners. So you're going to need every bit of space in there, and then like mush it and ooch it over to where it needs to be. It's not really filling this one corner, so let me work it into that corner a little better. Ooh, I think I like the 22-inch pillowcase, but yeah, I do. Let's shake this down a little bit. Yes, that's nice. It's a workout. I use my lint roller to just get all the fluffy fuzzies off of it. You can see how that crisscross works just perfectly. for holding our pillowcase, and you can't see the pillow inside. Oh, that is divine. That's cute. So there you have it, a perfectly patchwork pumpkin pillowcase made out of upholstery fabric remnants from a swatch book that I got from the thrift store. Proof that it just takes a little creativity and innovation to make beautiful things. I'm really excited about these pillows. I'm going to put them out for the fall. And again, I would recommend the 22-inch pillow form. I'll link those below in case you want to get the same ones that I'm using. I really like these pillow forms. They're nice and fluffy and very comfy to sit with. I'm Chelsea with She Sews Seams. Thank you so much for following along today. Make sure to subscribe to my channel to stay up to date on all of my fun fall projects that are coming up. And don't forget, the holidays are right around the bend, so we'll have some fun projects coming up for that as well. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. I'll see you next time. Happy sewing, everyone.